You are not wrong. You are not crazy. You are actually witnessing the gradual takeover of these United States by communist elements. And I know it sounds a bit absurd to say, but that's kind of the point. They want it to seem absurd. They want regular people to ignore this. You are a frog in a pot, and the temperature is slowly increasing. They want it to sound absurd, but it's the truth. I know we can look back at history and see McCarthyism and all these, the Red Scare and things like that, but it is literally happening, slowly but surely. The latest news, Black Lives Matter, is blaming the United States over what's happening in Cuba. There are activists online, leftists, saying things like the U.S. is interfering with the Cuban people and their right to choose their own government. I didn't realize that in a dictatorship, you had a voice and a choice in who was going to be leading the country. You don't. Cuba is a communist authoritarian dictatorship. It is not the United States' fault that they are having problems. We do not owe them anything, but you can see the corrupt rot at the core of Black Lives Matter in the statement they released about Cuba. The idea that the problem with Cuba is not their own failures as a communist country, but that the United States won't give them free stuff. That one, to me, truly incredible. And when Jen Psaki was asked about the people in Cuba who are revolting, who are saying, we will not stand by, who are in revolt, I'll put it that way, because revolt has multiple definitions, but the people in Cuba who are in revolt, saying no to communist dictatorship. What does Jen Psaki say? She won't say communism. Joe Biden said COVID. The media said COVID. And now Reuters is putting out a story saying these protesters opposing communism run the risk of spreading COVID. Man, you know, there's a lot of people who seem to think that the U.S. would love to just storm into Cuba and take it over and wipe out the scourge that is communism. Perhaps that would have been true 10, 20 years ago. You've got the mayor of Miami saying airstrikes should be on the table. But you take a look at what the federal government's doing, what the prominent leftist establishment wants, and you can clearly see, my friends, this country is already split in two. Who does Joe Biden represent as the president of the United States? When he comes out and says earlier this year, we need to have more lockdowns, and you probably heard me say it, even though Texas and Florida were already reopened, he clearly wasn't talking about you. He wasn't talking to you. He wasn't talking to Texas or Florida or these other red states. I mean, these are large, populous states. So who is Joe Biden talking to, and who is he talking to now? That's right. Joe Biden is talking to the people who voted for him and no one else. He's not a president that is trying to actively represent everybody. No, he represents a divided nation. That's about it. So when you see elements of the Biden administration and the left defending Cuba or downplaying what the communists do, yeah, it's a big change from where America was, say, 40, 50 years ago, right? That's because we are being slowly but surely taken over. I want to read for you what Black Lives Matter said, but I want to make one point. You need to check out the graphic novel I Am Legend. You may have seen the movie. The movie was bad. I don't like it. I Am Legend. What does it really mean? If you're not familiar, in the movie, it's like there's a mutant zombie apocalypse or whatever. In the graphic novel, it's basically about vampires and a vampire hunter. The vampire hunter is trying to stop the spread of vampirism. So he goes around staking the vampires through the heart, and they die. He lurks around in the day while they're sleeping and he takes them out. But eventually, the vampirism keeps spreading. More and more people are being turned into vampires. Eventually, they capture the vampire hunter and they put him in jail. And they want to try him for crimes against vampire kind. And in the end, he looks out the window, and the point of it is, once everyone became a vampire, he became the monster that kids would tell each other at night, the monster in these stories, that he would lurk around while they slept and secretly kill people and their loved ones. You see, if you have 100 people and one person is a vampire, the 99 say, stop the vampire. But if that vampire spreads and all of a sudden 99 people are vampires, they say, stop the vampire hunter. And you've lost your society. That's basically what's happening here in the United States. As more and more young people are being converted into communists, eventually you won't matter. That's right. We can sit here all day and night, but if we don't speak to young people and young people don't push back, it won't matter. But I'll tell you what you need to realize. Even young conservatives and young moderates or anti-SJW, anti-CRT, whatever, these individuals are still particularly progressive. That's right. I mean, look, I've got a decently large channel and large audience, thanks to all of you who are watching, but I'm not a conservative, yet they still call me right-wing, even though I'm like, I think we should have universal health care. And they're like, that's a right-wing position. You get it? In 10 years, they're going to claim I'm far right. I mean, they already kind of do. So what happens then in actuality in 10 years? That's the joke. Republicans will eventually be socialists. That is the pressure they were applying because conservatives don't fight. The William F. Buckley quote Jack Posobiec mentioned yesterday on IRL, that if the conservatives are the people who say to his, in history, say, stop. That's not fighting for anything. That's just you standing in front of a steamroller as Austin Powers is slowly inching towards you and you just scream. You could get out of the way, or you could actually maybe try and figure out a way to stop the steamroller. Is that what it's called, steamroller? I was just watching Austin Powers. Netflix recommended it. But you know that scene where he's like in the really slow-moving steamroller and then the dude is standing like 200 feet away going, no! That's basically what's happening. Fox News. Black Lives Matter blames U.S., praises Cuban regime, social media erupts. The BLM tweet was sent out at about the time the Cuban president Miguel Diaz-Canel admitted that his government's failures played a role in the protests. Hey, good for him, I suppose. A smart move that a lot of these dictators did not realize. Now, here's what you should do. Go to timcast.com, become a member, like this video, share this video, show this to your friends and family. I probably should say it more on this channel. I don't really. But go to timcast.com. We are going to be launching the date we have right now is sometime next week, maybe Monday, hopefully. There's probably going to be some bugs, but the new site is fantastic. We got a ton of writers. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. And with your support as members, we can fight back against this censorship and we can start building culture. Because I want to explain something to you. And I got this quote right here from Black Lives Matter. I'll read. But I want to stress. You saw what I said about the kids. If you do not inspire young people and teach them, then you don't exist. This is true for everything. This is true for sports. If you can't get young people to come out and engage in your cultural activities, be it painting or surfing or skateboarding, then in 20 years, there is no sport anymore. Just a bunch of old people reminiscing about the glory days. So what are we doing? At timcast.com, we have the Cast Castle vlog, youtube.com/castcastle. Shenanigans, there's maybe 0.1% political, if it is. Doing backflips off of ramps on scooters, just having fun. Filming the stuff we do for fun because we want to inspire young people to do cool things. That's what we're working on. And we're working on a mysteries podcast, a culture review podcast like entertainment stuff. We're talking about doing a weekly D&D podcast where a lot of podcasts, but some of it's visual. We're doing like videos, we're doing shows, we're doing field reporting, mini docs. We're going to build culture to push back on this. Here's what Black Lives Matter said. BLM on Instagram, verified 4.5 million followers, says, Black Lives Matter condemns the U.S. federal government's inhumane treatment of Cubans and urges it to immediately lift the economic embargo. This cruel and inhumane policy, instituted with the explicit intention of destabilizing the country and undermining Cubans' right to choose their own government, is at the heart of Cuba's current crisis. Since 1962, the U.S. has forced pain and suffering on the people of Cuba by cutting off food, medicine, and supplies, costing a tiny island nation an estimated $130 billion. I love that. I love that idea that the people of Cuba are not responsible for themselves. Grow your own food, develop your own technology, trade with other countries. Oh no, the U.S. has embargoed Cuba. We are not responsible for them. I'm not a big fan of what the U.S. does in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong with foreign policy. But we don't owe Cuba anything. Sorry. They say, without that money, it is harder for Cuba to acquire medical equipment needed to develop its own COVID-19 vaccines and equipment for food production. This comes in spite of the country's strong medical care and history of lending doctors and nurses to disasters around the world. You know what? I just want to say, which is really fascinating. The people of Cuba are protesting. They're saying down with dictatorship. They don't get to choose their leaders. And maybe the U.S. plays a role. Maybe the people of Cuba are saying, dude, just trade with the U.S. already. I mean, the U.S. doesn't like communist dictatorship and the people don't. So they're probably like, what do we lose? You get rid of the dictators, you get rid of the communism, and the U.S. reopens trade? Fine. Why does Black Lives Matter and why do these communists believe that the U.S. should be forced to do trade with Cuba? They say the people of Cuba are being punished by the U.S. government because the country has maintained its commitment to sovereignty and self-determination. U.S. leaders have tried to crush this revolution for decades. Instead of international amity, respect, and goodwill, the U.S. government has only instigated suffering for the country's 11 million people, of which 4 million are black and brown. You have a country that violently, Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, racist homophobes, and the U.S. is like, we're not going to do business with you, and that's final. And Black Lives Matter thinks we should be forced to do business with them, and it's our fault. Cuba has historically demonstrated solidarity with oppressed peoples of African descent, from protecting black revolutionaries like Assata Shakur through granting her asylum, to supporting black liberation struggles in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and South Africa. Now we look to President Biden to end the embargo, something Barack Obama called for in 2016. This embargo is a blatant human rights violation, and it must come to an end. That's right. Your stuff should be our stuff. That's a great motto, and it's exactly what you'd expect from communists, people who don't do work. One of my favorite quotes from a Twitter communist was, we should arrest all of the billionaires, send them to the gulag to break rocks so they can learn what hard work really means. As if that Twitterati moron ever actually did any hard work. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are a lot of communists who have done hard work. I mean, actually, Soviet Union and China, the slave labor of the people in these communist countries, yeah, they definitely do hard work. But what I mean is these American leftist activists who blindly support communist countries, they don't do hard work. They've probably never lifted a heavy object in their lives. They're not responsible for their own food production and their own security. They think you should give to them. Isn't that incredible? They go to the farms. They take the food. The farmer works so hard and then what do? Look at North Korea. It's a caste system, basically. I just learned this recently after I interviewed Yeonmi Park on Timcast IRL. She was saying basically you've got, the higher class people who live in the cities and then the lower class people who do the farm work. And it's feudalistic. It's just authoritarian and serfdom, indentured servitude, etc. Capitalism, the American corporatist structure. It's really bad. But you know what I don't want? Corporanism. Yes, that's right. Corporation-based communism, which is exactly what's happening here in the United States. Of course, there are elements of communists, in the U.S. You've got Black Lives Matter, trained Marxists. You've got critical race theory based on Marxist ideology. You've got these activists who want equal outcome, not opportunity. You have those elements, but what's really happening is corporanism. And it's probably not the best word for it, but you get the point. It's a combination of corporate and communism. We have BlackRock and Blackstone, two different companies, similar names, and they are working towards taking away your ability to own property. Now, I think it's BlackRock. I mix them up, but one of them, I think BlackRock, is actually buying up houses, and they're outbidding people so they can't afford them. You'll see a house you want. It's $200,000. And you'll be like, I'd like to get a mortgage for that. And then this company pops up and goes, we'll do $250,000. And then you're like, dude, I can't afford that. And they're like, too bad. They buy it. And then they're processing them to be rentals. They don't want you to own anything. As they say in the Great Reset, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And that's where we're heading. The other one, I think Blackstone, bought a company that specializes in buying properties and renting them out. So there's movement happening in that direction. You've got big tech silencing your abilities to shutting down your ability to speak, silencing your opinions, controlling the flow of information. It's incredible. How do you maintain a central planning based economy, a command economy, Well, back in the day, it was really difficult for the Soviets and for communist China. But communist China figured something out. You got to control the flow of information better. It was really difficult to censor decentralized communications. When people had access to radio or pigeons, and that was the bulk of communications, it was hard for the Soviets to actually deal with that. What do you do if someone's on a radio somewhere and you can't figure out where it is and they keep saying things that, espouse truth? Now it's not so difficult anymore. The communists can control the flow of information, remove anyone who opposes them, allow what appears to be dissent, and then you will keep a blind, ignorant population happy because they won't know what's happening. Harriet Tubman said, "I have freed many slaves. I would have freed many more if only they knew they were slaves." You see how that works? If the command economy happens, and it is happening, we see what the house is being bought up, then the end result is going to be you owning nothing. Now, will you be happy with that? Right now, the answer is no, you won't be. The average person is going to be like, I need things to survive. So the idea is they can buy it all up, make you an indentured servant. You'll be forced to live at their for their whims. They'll have wealth. They'll have power, much like North Korea or communist China. And there's nothing that'll ever change. They will remove your ability towards upward mobility. However, with the flow of information controlled, you'll be happy. You won't know. How could you be unhappy if you literally don't know? So what happens is you would be unhappy. But your children, they won't know better. They're going to grow up in this world and say, look at the problems of capitalism. It's all the fault of capitalism because these people did not live through the corruption of, say, the Democrats, the Biden administration, the neocons, the Republican Party in the 2000s. They didn't live through it. These kids are growing up today. They're seeing problems and they're being propagandized. What the Democrats really want is a command economy. And the biggest threat to their communist takeover, Corpianism, it's different. They have, corporate entities in control. So it's kind of fascism, a bit. The problem is classical liberalism. Those who believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those who believe in the rights of the individuals to know, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to free speech and religion. That is one of the biggest problems for the Corpianists. Corpianist, maybe there's a better word for it. Comparate? I don't know, whatever. You get the point. You look at Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Apparently Australia, Victoria, I believe, is going to be instituting another lockdown soon. Canada, of course, has just been crazy. New Zealand, apparently there's talk about like mandatory vaccination. In the U.S., you know why it's really hard to do? Constitution, the Bill of Rights. There are a lot of people who are trying to claim the U.S. should have never broken off from Britain because then slavery would have ended sooner. Perhaps. And that's okay. All right. That may be true because the UK ended slavery in 1833 in the entirety of the Commonwealth. So maybe that's true. But I'll tell you this. If we stayed as colonies of Britain and ended up like Canada, for the most part, a sovereign nation, they would easily just come in, implement all of their psychotic authoritarian rules, and you'd have no expectations, no culture built around that freedom. Canada was very much colonies of Great Britain and I believe France. But I believe Quebec was British. They didn't want to be a part of the revolution. I don't know a whole lot. I'm not going to get into every little nitty-gritty detail on what Canada was doing. I'm not a scholar of Canadian history. But these people do not have that culture of freedom because they never fought for it. They came out like pioneers, same as the people came out, to the United States. But they didn't fight for their freedom. The people in Canada just said, I don't know, whatever, Certainly they had their war and their conflict. In the U.S., we fought for the freedom and many died. And it's fascinating because the people who are willing to die for that freedom, I wonder if they had children. A lot of young men, right? Those ideas and that maybe that really changed our society. Seeing so many people lay down their lives for their ideals had a profound impact on the sisters, the brothers, the wives, the mothers, the fathers, the pain they felt and the anger they felt from what the crown took from them. And they said, we will bear arms and we will never allow you to do something like this again. Of course, there were moral problems, I suppose, by today's standards, but to apply today's standards to the past would be kind of silly. We've greatly improved. But you have these people experience all that death from the revolution. And so it's ingrained in our culture that we will be free. And we're faltering every day. You see Black Lives Matter rising up. You see these powerful elite interests. They want to reclaim control. And you know what, to be completely honest, they probably did in the early 1900s what year was it? The Federal Reserve, was that the 20s actually? 1908, I don't know. You had the banker plot. It was Smedley Butler. You had Jekyll Island. Yeah, they eventually, the elites, powerful, wealthy interests, and like the elites, the rich people, the 1%, we'll call them that, figured out how to gain control of the country through manipulation. And here we are. I don't know if there's a way out, but I can say with Donald Trump, it was interesting. You had somebody break through, and that meant something, I guess. They freaked out. They're freaking out even more. Eric Weinstein tweeted, he said, "I swear we had a completely different country just a few minutes ago," or something like that. And I wonder, is this the moment that the communist insurgency finally gained enough power to destroy this country from the inside out? It's not just about controlling the presidency. It's about having enough people in the FBI. It's about having enough people in the FBI who support you, but also who are too scared to say anything against you, who go along with the manipulations and the authoritarianism. It's about politicians who would support it. It's about people in media who would lie. That's a large effort. So I don't think it's a conspiracy. It's just an ideology that has reached far and wide, like any other ideology. The only problem is this one has no moral framework, so you will never be safe. This is an ideology that says if the collective wants, the collective takes at the expense of the individual. And if you can harm the individual to get what you want, eventually the grassroots is gutted, it rises to the top and the whole system collapses. And that's why communism fails. But there are clever things they do. Hybrid scenarios with corporate structures and the Communist Party, and China seems to have figured out how to make authoritarianism last longer. Hopefully, individual liberties prevail, but we'll see. It all depends on whether or not you are willing to stand up and say, I will not accept these things from these extremists. To stand up and say, we do not accept Cuban communism. We'll see. And it also depends on whether or not you're willing to share this video and go to timcast.com to become a member. I'm half kidding, but go ahead and do that. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.